It's Lori here. I'm here today to do my September wrap up. I'm unsure at the filming of this video if it's going to be a one-part video or a two-part video. I'm thinking right now it's going to be a one-part video, but if you see it go up in two parts, I just thought the video was getting too long. But I've actually had a really good reading month this month. I'm doing so much better with my life balance. I talked about that in a previous video that I'm trying to get better, and my TV shows have not started yet. So I know that once that happens, my reading might go down a little bit. Also, the month of October is always New York City Comic Con, which is crazy as it is, but I'm really looking forward to it this year. So I did, at the time of this recording, I did wind up reading so far 11 books. That number is probably going to change by the end of this video, but right now I wound up reading 11 books. Had a really good reading month, a really good listening month as well, so let's get into it. The first book that I wound up finishing reading was House of Salt and Sorrow by Erin A. Craig. This was the Owl Crate book for the month of August. Wound up really liking this book. This book was a very, very eerie, creepy read. It's a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and it follows all these girls. They live in this manor house, and throughout their lives, their sisters have started dying in like unexpected ways. And the lead girl, Adelaide, is dealing with a lot, and on the book opens with one of her sisters dying. And she's kind of on a mission to figure out why her sisters keep dying. It's a very eerie, creepy read. I really did like the retelling elements. I thought that the character names, because they were all very, very similar, were kind of hard to follow, like who was connected to who and who was who. I felt like the girls could have had a little bit more personality, and there was a lot of girls in this book. There was like a set of like triplets, and then there was three younger kids. So differentiating the girls from each other was a little bit hard for me, and I really wish this book had like a family tree. But I wound up really liking it. This was the first creepy read I read, and it kind of set me on my path to read that. But I wound up giving this book 4 stars. I was also participating in the Owl Readathon this month. So House of Salt and Sorrow did fulfill the Ancient Runes requirement that was of a retelling. And then the next book that I wound up picking up was The Paris Seamstress by Natasha Lister, and that book fulfilled the Owl requirement for Charms class, which was to read an adult book. This book was a dual timeline novel, and you follow a grandmother and her granddaughter like many, many years apart. One is like in World War II, and the other point of view is in like 2015. I really like this book. I really enjoyed it. I love both characters. I was fond of them both. I really love both storylines. I love how they interconnected. I wish I could have had a little bit more spycraft elements throughout the novel, but it was a very, very compelling read. I was fascinated by the settings that we got. I thought that the plot was really interesting and super hard to predict. There was like a big mystery in the book that you were like trying to figure out. I just found it to be a very compelling, fast paced read, and it was one that I really had a hard time putting down. I thought that it dealt with a lot of different topics of like war, spycraft, sister dynamics, parent and daughter relationships. It was so interesting, and I wound up giving this read 4.5 stars. First year that I've actually been following my seasonal TBR, because I always pick like 12 books I want to read and then I never wind up reading them. But I have actually been getting a lot better. So the next book that I wound up picking up was Hunting Prince Dracula by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the second book in her Stalking Jack the Ripper series. And I really wound up liking this book. It's been a while since I read Stalking Jack the Ripper. I would say it's been at least like 2 years. But I did enjoy it. I think I might have preferred the mystery of Stalking Jack the Ripper a little bit more. But I did really like the school. I thought that the dynamics between Thomas and Aubrey Rose were really interesting. I just wish the storyline was a little bit more tightly wound than like as the first story was, and I wasn't as connected to the characters in this book, because it was very like an isolating book that you really focused on Audrey, and even Audrey and Thomas had some bad like dynamics that were interesting. So Audrey was really by herself throughout most of this novel, and I struggled with that a little bit. But I did like the setting, and I liked what they were doing with Audrey and Thomas's relationship, because I thought that was super realistic. So I wound up giving this read 3 stars, and I definitely want to read the next one hopefully soon. So this was the next one that I wound up picking up. Then the next book that I completed in the month of um, September, I've been doing this, and I've been doing this, and actually has been working out really well. I stick a graphic novel in the front of my book sleeve, and I'm going to talk about this in my reading routine video. And whenever I wind up finishing a book, I will read the graphic novel next. So the next one that I wound up picking up was The OK Witch by Emma Streichler, and this book actually did come out in September. But oh my god, it was so cute. It was like a graphic novel. Most of this is not in color, but I'll show you a couple of the color pages. But it follows this girl named Maud, and she loves witchcraft, and she loves like witches. She loves Halloween. When she learns she's a witch, it kind of turns her world on her head. Has a lot of behavior dynamics with her mom that she wasn't like expecting. But it was so cute. I really loved it. I thought that it was a nice. It dealt with like the witch trials and witch hunters. Just thought it was super cute, and I really liked it. So I really enjoyed it. So I wound up giving this graphic novel read 3 stars, and it was just so cute. Like I really liked it, and I love the art style. It was just a fun read. So I would definitely read more by this author in the future. And then the next book that I wound up reading is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. For the life of me, I don't know where my book went, so I'm going to have to show you a picture of the cover. That I did receive at BEA, and I did wind up reading it a little bit early. Definitely another fall read. And I will say, right now, I will give this book like 4 stars. I thought that it was a very slow burnish story, and I do love slow burn stories. I love it, especially when the world is really complicated, and I think that this book definitely does have a complicated world. One that I think you do need to feel like kind of invested in to read it. But I really did like it. It follows this girl, and she is like shipped off to New Orleans from her hometown. Something happened in her hometown, and she is sent away. So she's sent to New Orleans. She goes to a convent, trying to get like to show like that she's like a prestigious young lady, and murders start happening in this town. And you spend the whole book knowing it's a vampire novel, like you know that it's been pushed as that. But the vampires didn't really become a thing until like the last like maybe like 30 pages. You knew a vampire was killing because like obviously these murders were happening, but it didn't become really apparent what that was until like the last 40 pages of the book. Definitely a slow burn story. There's definitely romance of like a hint of like romance thrown in. There are also elements of another supernatural community that comes in this novel that you learn at the tail ends of the novel. That's the twist that I'm a little bit hesitant about, so I'm gonna hold my thoughts until I read book 2. But it was a very good foundation novel. I would have liked a little bit more action. I'll say that. Like I felt like I was kept waiting for a big moment to happen. I just didn't get there. But yeah, so right now I would give this book 4 stars. My review might change in the next book, like depending on how she does the second book. But I will say, if you're okay with slow burn stories, read it. I normally love slow burn stories. This one I wanted a little bit more action, but I did enjoy it, and I would definitely read book 2 in the series. Is the first book for the Time Warp YA Book Club, and that's Ignite the Stars by Maura Malan. This was a science fiction read that I wound up actually really enjoying. I really like basically it follows this girl named Iya, who I have a friend named Iya, but she is known as like it's like she's known as like a criminal, and she's wound up being captured at the start of this novel. The political drama is real in this novel, but she winds up being sent to a flight school where she is going to be a student. She winds up meeting a flight master and a girl who is trying to run from her past, and they wind up striking up a friendship. I thought it was a really political heavy novel. I really did like the space school. I thought that the friendship dynamics between the girls were super interesting. There was also elements of a romance that I really did like. But yeah, it was a really interesting, nice foundational novel, and I would wind up giving this read 3 stars. I did like the pacing. I thought the political stuff that dealt with was really interesting. I also liked how it dealt with like the refugee crisis in like this book, because I thought that that's something that we should be talking about in America, but I really like that it was addressed in the book. But yeah, so that's my thought on Ignite the Stars by Maura Malan. I would give it between 3.5, 4 stars. It just depends. But I'll definitely be checking out book 2 when I get my hands on it. And then the next book I'm going to chat about is the book that I went to the book launch for, and that is The Van Beekers to the Rescue by Karen Van Glazer. I actually wound up really, really liking this book. I wound up giving this book 5 stars because I am in love with this series. It is one of the only contemporary middle grade series that I do read. But as an only child, I love books that have big families. It's set in New York City, right where I went to school, right near City College. And this one follows all the kids as they are trying to desperately save their mother's baking business. The first book was set around Christmas. The second book was set around in the summer. This book is set around spring break. And I loved it. I mean, the covers were so sweet. She was so sweet. I got to see her daughters play the violin. Really, really sweet. I mean, I really liked it. I flew through this book in like a day after I finished Ignite the Stars on the day of the book event, and I just really enjoyed it. I know that they're going to come out with another 2 books in the series, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, that's my thought on the Van Beekers to the Rescue. And this book had so many animals. I was like, oh my god, animals galore. But the baking business and the cookies that they made at the book launch were awesome. And then the next book that I wound up reading, they all fell. Was The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. I wound up reading this one for the Owl Readathon for History of Magic. For this is a book that was published 10 years ago. And I did like it. I didn't love it. This book is very, very chunky. And I was invested in the plot, but not as much as I wanted to. I really did like the characters. I like that they focused on the mysteries. Basically, it follows this child. Does it tell his name? I think his name is Rennie. And he winds up getting invited to take a test for the Mysterious Benedict Society. And then it winds up realizing what he's actually being used for. And he goes on this adventure at the school. It was a very interesting read. I just wish it held my attention a little bit more. It wasn't as fast-paced of a read as I was expecting. Like, I trudged along a little bit towards the middle. I thought the pacing was a little bit off. So I ended up giving this read 3 stars, but I would definitely consider reading more in the future. But as I said in my reading vlog, you could pretty much read this book and then not read the other ones. I felt it was like a very, very self-contained story. But I do own them, so I will probably read them eventually. But that's my thoughts on the Mysterious Benedict Society. And then the next book that I wound up picking up was Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. This book was another one of the books that I picked up. It was in my sleeve of my book sleeve. But this was a graphic novel by Faith Erin Hicks and Rainbow Rowell, and it basically follows these 2 characters. Another perfect fall read. I'm so excited that I read it. It basically follows this girl named Josie and DJ, and they're in their their final year working at this pumpkin patch before they go away to school, and Josiah and DJ have to go on an adventure to get Josie the girl of his dreams. And it was just so fun. The writing, the art style, oh my goodness, the art style was gorgeous. I loved it. Loved that it was in full color because this is an ARC. But it was just so fun. It really focuses on friendship and like just the autumn colors and all the places that they went. I wish the adventure would have went on like a little bit more, like they saw a few more places. But at the heart of this, it was really about friendship, and I really liked it. There was romantic undertones, and it was pushing characters out of their comfort zones, which I really like. But yeah, I wound up giving this read 4 stars. And then the next book that I wound up reading was actually an audiobook, and it is called The Mistwork School of Music by Jessica Corey. This is by saying I am not working with Audible. They are not paying me to say this, but I do pay for Audible every month, and the way that it works is you get a free credit, which means you get to book from any of their millions of books, and then they've also started doing this where you get like Audible Originals, which are books that are exclusive to them, and one of the September picks was The Mistwork School of Musicraft, and I heard about it on Owl Crate Junior's channel. Like, she was doing a video, she was talking about it. And I work in a school with kids and we do music a lot, and I just really like the concept of it, and I wound up picking it up and really wound up enjoying it. I wound up giving it 4 stars. But it basically follows this young girl, and in this world, music is their way of creating magic. Like, when they play music, that's how magic happens. And she is determined to become a maestro, and she has a disastrous audition. and she doesn't think she's going to get in. And by a weird twist of fate, she does wind up getting in, but she goes into the school kind of on probation. And when you read the book, you'll learn why. But the one thing I loved about this book, like the audiobook experience, was that they actually played the songs in the book on the audio track. And oh my God, it was like so exciting. Like I just loved it. I thought it was such a way to like really capture you. It was kind of like when I read the Illuminae File series and they had such like an interactive learning, like interactive reading experience. Totally loved it. And I really love the characters. I thought the adventure was so cool. I really loved the magic system. I was really hooked. I just had a hard time putting the book down. I think I read it in like 2 days. Such a fast listen. That's going to be the same thing that happened with Dead Voices, which I'm going to talk about next. But I really liked it. I really hope we get a book 2. I kind of see where book 2's heading, like if they do what I think they're going to do. But I will definitely get this like an audiobook when it comes out because it was such an easy listen and it was so engaging. And the next book that I'm going to chat about is Dead Voices by Catherine. Equal to Small Spaces that she wrote last year. Last year's one was set in the fall. This one was set in the winter. But I have to admit, I really did like this book, and I think I actually preferred this setting and this experience to listening to it to Small Spaces. I did like Small Spaces, that's why I came back, because the characters. But I think this story, like set in the winter, like in a cabin, in a haunted cabin with the snowfall, was just so creepy. But it basically follows this group of characters that you met in the first book, but they're parents and they wind up going to a cabin for the week for the weekend, I guess. And some drama starts happening in this cabin. Like they're trapped there. It's snowing. They can't go anywhere. They don't have any food. They don't have any water. Well, they have food and water, but they can't leave because it's a lot of snow. And then the ghosts come out. I love the listening experience for this. It was like an added creepy level. I think I listened to it in like a day. I just was doing a lot of grading and I just kind of put it on the background. But I really wound up liking it. I mean, I love the characters. I love the stories. I was much more invested in this story than the last one. But I'm definitely going to be checking out the spring and summer ones when they come out in the next upcoming years. But I mean, I also really do have to go read her Bear and the Nightingale series because I've heard great things. But that is my thoughts on Dead Voices by Katherine Arden. Back. It is September 29th, which means I have read a bunch more books, and I'm here to wrap up this monthly wrap up. I really think I will finish 2 books between today and the first day of October, so I'll just talk about those in my October wrap up. But the next book that I did wind up completing was Deadly Little Scandals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This book does come out in November, and it is, I think right now I'm going to say it's the conclusion to her Little White Lies series. And I will admit, the first book I liked. This book I adored. I thought it was such a good mystery. I do say this a lot with Jennifer Lynn Barnes books. If you read her stories, I recommend you read them as close back to back as you can because she writes such well-rounded and such complicated stories, and they really are like tightly wound. So you really do need to read them back to back. Definitely going to wind up re-listening to these at some point because I just really loved it. I love the world. It's like basically like a debutante society. Sawyer is a character that didn't grow up in this life. Kind of a little bit like Gilmore Girl vibes. The first book had a lot of secrets. This book has a lot of secrets. I don't want to get too much into the plot of this book, but there's another. The first book was about debutante society. This book was about a secret society that the girls wind up becoming members of. But there's a lot of other mysteries, a lot of things that are revealed, and it was just so well done. Definitely gave this book 5 stars, and it was one of my highlight reads of the month, and I cannot wait to see what Jennifer Lynn Barnes is working on next. I'm doing my sweaters in this video because it's getting cold. But the next book that I wound up completing was We Hunt the Flame by Hasha Faisal. This book has been on my TBR since I got it, I think in like May. Well, I wasn't the biggest fan of this book. If you did watch my reading vlog, I'm not sure when it's probably up before this video, but I just didn't love this book. I wanted to, and I don't know if it's because of when I read it and I really wasn't in the mental place to be reading it. Or, I know that, like, I really thought the world building was fascinating, but it's about these 2 different characters, and they're both kind of searching for this artifact, and this artifact will kind of be beneficial for their sides. It's a Muslim-inspired novel. I mean, she's a Muslim American, which I always really like to support. I just didn't feel as connected to the characters as I wanted. And I thought the pacing in this book was super weird because in the pacing overall as the story was a little bit slower and not as like much happened. So I thought there was some pacing issues. But the end of the chapters were super compelling because you wanted to read the next chapter. I really did like the split point of views. I thought that they were two very interesting characters. They would have been, but I just wasn't that interested in them. I think that hindered my enjoyment a little bit. So I did wind up giving it 3 stars. It was not my favorite read of the month, but I'm still interested enough to consider reading book 2. It just might be like a re-listen in the future for me. So that's my thought on We Hunt the Flame by Hasha Faisal. And then the last book I am going to chat about the last physical book I'm going to talk about in this video was Sanity in Tallulah's Field Trip by Molly Brooks. I read Sanity in Tallulah last year and I really loved it. This book I did like. I think I liked the first one a little bit more. I was a little bit more invested in that storyline with the with the cat that they cloned and stuff like that. But this one follows them on a field trip and a bunch of shenanigans happen. There was a lot of different mini plots in this book, and I felt like that they just didn't like come together as smoothly as I wanted them to. So I think I missed that. There was a lot of side characters that we just didn't get to wind up seeing in this book. But I did think it was a really, really fun read. The art style is like definitely the highlight of this read. There was some plot pacing issues in this that just weren't as strong as last book. But I still love the focus on STEM and STEM society and them being in space and field trips. And I did enjoy it. So I wound up giving this read 3 stars. And then the last read that I wound up currently finishing this month was Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. Such a long journey for me. I finally have finished this series. I started this series. This was like when I really started getting into like booktube and like watching this. I started this series like a while ago. But I finally wound up finishing it and I actually really enjoyed it. I wound up giving it 4 stars. I think that this book wasn't my favorite, but there is a lot of it wasn't anything bad. I preferred surprisingly Tower of Dawn, I think was my favorite book. I definitely like the tail end of this book a little bit more than the first half of the book. I like how all like the characters were in like one place and they were all fighting together. The last part of this book was really, really emotional and it just really like solidified everything. I just really love the characters in this, especially like as you're getting to know them. This is another series that I will definitely reread in the future. Because some of these books are just so long. And I would like to like really take my time with them and read it at like my leisure. But I really wound up liking it. I'm so happy that I wound up finishing this series finally with the group. And I'm excited to start on a new series with them next month. At the time of this recording, I am in the middle of a couple of books. I am in the middle of Serpent and Dove by Shelby Matterhorn. And I'm on page 400, so I should really finish this tonight, depending on how much reading time I have. I am also in the middle of listening to Captive by Catherine Oxenberg, which is a telling of her story when her daughter was in the cult NXIVM and how she's trying to like extract her. I really am proud of myself this month. I actually got a lot of reading done, and I also was able to follow my fall TBR, which almost never ever happens. So I was really, really proud of myself in that. And overall, I think I wound up reading. Let me see if it will tell me. Let me see. I wound up finishing reading. I think it was 15 books, and I think it was 15 books, and 3 of them were audiobooks. So that's my reading wrap up. I cannot wait to see what I wind up reading in October and see if my plans keep going the way they are. Can't wait to see what books I wind up getting from New York City Comic Con, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, let me know in the comments what were some of your most exciting reads. For me, I think it was definitely The Van Beekers to the Rescue, The Mystery School of Musicras, and Deadly Little Scandals. If I do wind up finishing this book this month, it will definitely be on my list because I really, really love Serpent and Dove, but I'll talk about this next month. And the books that were a little bit disappointment was The Mysterious Benedict Society and We Hunt the Flame. Let me know your highs and lows in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys later for another video. Bye.